Hey, White Sox fans, Brett Ballantini here, hosting Sox Populi Podcast number 189. You may not be able to hear it in the robust voice speaking to you on the podcast, but if you're watching, I am about 24 hours into food poisoning. I haven't eaten anything in about a day. So when I invariably collapsed during this podcast, I am handing it over to Hannah Filippo, my guest here on 189. She will take over to discuss, if not White Sox items, why the Milwaukee Brewers will overtake the Chicago Cubs for the NL Central title. Hopefully by the time she waxes on enough about that, she's seen a lot of Brewers in person already this year. By the time she's done with that, hopefully I will revive enough to be able to wind the podcast up. So you'll have a tidy 2-3 hour episode at a time where you think, why would you do a podcast at all, much less 2 or 3 hours? But I'm just trying to let you know what you're in store for, because at some point I will give out. Hannah, welcome. Thank you for joining me on 189 and discussing a team on track for either 40 or 41 wins. Thank you. You get extra credit for energy and maybe even partial optimism.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess we need some of that to go around.
Let's review some numbers before we get into, the stuff we seem to now be perpetually talking about on Sox Populi Podcasts, which is usually how bad the Chicago White Sox are. Well, let's drill down into how bad they are. They're 7-21. That's not good. It's 3 straight years the White Sox have started horribly. 2023, they started out 7-21. 2024, they started out 6-22. And now in 2025, 7-21. Some say it was the manager. All right, well, we'll get to that, I suppose. This 7-21 record is a 41-121 pace. Technically, it's 40.5 wins. We're going to be generous and round them up. But basically, yes, to those of you listening who aren't aware, the White Sox are on the exact same pace and not exactly playing the toughest schedule, the exact same pace as a year ago, which, as we ad infinitum are aware of, worst modern baseball team in history, worst going back to, for a while there, it was going to be all the way to 1899, and then they had that hot streak against the Angels and sort of screwed up all the truly horrible history we were tracking all season long. Way to ruin it, White Sox. White Sox are 11 games behind Detroit, who have gotten out to a very strong start and seem like they want to bury the rest of the AL Central, a division that is really built to be buried. White Sox have a negative 25 run differential, not in any way like they started out last year, which actually I would argue is an indictment of Will Venable and not a plus, because they're just simply run differential. This doesn't mean anything unless you want it to mean something. Based on run differential, their record should be 11-17. And I got to tell you, 4 games worse than your differential this early in the season, not great. Not indicting Will Venable. Maybe Hannah and I will talk about that in this podcast to come, but they would be on track run diff based on the fact that they're in a lot of games, 64-98 record. That would make us all, some of us, including me, not just because of food poisoning, would probably keel over and die if that happened. But most of us would just be weeping tears of joy if the White Sox lost only 98 games this year. Okay, so that all said, the White Sox are bad. They're not playing a particularly tough schedule. There are easy stretches still to come, but there are tough stretches to come as well. I mean, you can't beat the Athletics, home or away. White Sox have won, I believe, 1 series this season, which is a pace, I think, even worse maybe than a year ago. So, Hannah, before we get to any optimism, how about just a 28-game assessment as we stand? I guess we'll get into surprises or what you expected here in the podcast as it unfurls. But as you sit here doing a podcast with me, how are you feeling about the White Sox, your Sox fandom, and the chances of immediately turning this around?
It's tough. It's tough to say the least. I didn't expect it to be this bad, but
Yeah.
in a way, like looking at the rosters, the rosters are not crazy different from last year, which is kind of depressing to see worse output with similar young talent, at least on the
Mhm.
pitching side. But at least they aren't making fools of themselves with some of the mistakes. I mean, this week the games were fairly close, actually. I mean, that's against the Twins and the A's, but still, the games were fairly close enough where they looked like they just didn't have enough in the tank to get them the
Yeah.
win. So that's a plus that they looked somewhat competitive, but it doesn't matter at the end of the day if they don't win.
Yeah, we can't really pick on the A's or the Twins. We can't afford to be picky
Yeah.
when we say, "Oh, it's just close against those guys." Hey, if it was close against the Charlotte Knights, we'd be like, "Awesome." So yeah, yeah. I mean, well said. All right, let's try to spin, despite my lack of up talk beyond even food poisoning. Let's try to start the first half of this podcast, Hannah, with maybe some positives or some optimism. In spite of the fact that you're saying, yeah, I'm a little surprised they seem as similar as they were, and they are definitely a disappointment. There's no way any of us would have, well, some of us picked them to lose 120 games, so I guess maybe I anticipated this, but I guess it's not quite like the Pedro Grafal clown show as a year ago, but give me an idea of a couple things that maybe stand out as positives, surprises, stuff you're excited about, at least compared to, say, a year ago. Again, we're sort of running neck and neck with that team, so you can't get too far away from them, but there are still some things we can say we can actually up talk on compared to a year ago on the roster.
Well, the bright spot is that their young guys are coming through in the lineup. So, like Baldwin, Sosa, Mydrath before he went on the IL, and Caro have
Caro.
like the best batting averages on the team, which is really good for seeing the rest of AAA come up eventually.
Yeah.
Also, not so great with veterans like Benny and Robert. So, in a way, I'm happy to see that the young guys are coming through. Shows that the development in AAA is paying off, at least for now. But I'd like to see that all around as well. Seeing a team carried by guys who have less than 100 games is not what you want to see.
Yeah. Chris Getz, you might want to take notes here, because when all of the good players on the team are the guys that maybe in a normal season you wouldn't even expect to see on the roster, certainly not breaking down the door in mid-April to join the roster, maybe that's an indication that you either need to go out and get real players, and if somehow ownership, because I know your hands are tied, Chris, I know it's such a hard job you have, despite the staff parking spot you got there at the ballpark and et cetera. And the fact you still get paid no matter how many games you lose, you still have a job. It's a thought maybe to either like try to go big, try to make a clever deal, or bring guys up quicker. We got a guy, I know Hannah wants to jump on this, but we got Tim Elko down, and listen, Tim Elko's got a hole in his swing. It doesn't seem to have surfaced nearly the way it has in his professional career to date. He's got a hole, but a timeout. The entire lineup is a hole. It's just one big gaping hole. Bring the captain up. What are we waiting for on this? You've got the extra year of control. You'll have Tim Elko under control till he's 47 at this point. This is the guy like 38 already. Other things that jump out to you so far, Hannah? I mean, that's a broad and accurate accounting of the team, given the fact that, when you go down the lineup, it's like a bunch of guys not hitting 200. Oh yeah, they're the guys making sometimes $15 or $20 million, and it's the guys who've come up, bum rushed the big leagues like Edgar Caro and apparently Chase Mydroth, who are actually performing for this team. Other things you're seeing, maybe on the pitching side or defense.
Yeah, Shane Smith is still doing well. Like we were talking a couple weeks ago about how he's bright spot in this rotation, and it's kept up since. He's had one poor, below average start in his 5 starts, but that's not bad at all compared to the rest of the rotation. And then also the newcomers, Penn Murphy and Cam Boozer are doing great, holding up those late innings. So those are some pluses to see new guys. Maybe I guess that's the key, bringing in people who have a fresh face
Yeah.
in the franchise. That takes some notes, Chris Getz.
Yeah, Hannah, sure. I just, I'm fond of kicking Chris Getz in the nuts here on the podcast, or in print, or in my private thoughts, or sometimes even in my nightmares. But hey, smart move. Milwaukee just hemorrhages pitching. Yeah, not to say that Shane Smith wasn't sort of like the understood and universal #1 Rule 5 draft pick, and I think Milwaukee even knew, oh man, somehow, I'm not really sure how it came about, we can't protect this guy. He's gonna be gone. Bummer. And hey, sometimes you just got to tip in, and take the easy layups when you get them. And I think that's what Chris Getz did. So, again, that was some pretty backhanded complimenting there. But I mean, hey, credit, made the move, got, kept the guy. And apparently Chris Getz just really digs Rule 5 picks. We got 3 of them on the roster now. One of whom has definitely established himself as a legit contributor, if not projecting to be our all-star game representative this year. Another, Mike Vassell, pitching pretty well. I mean, I think he's had one, teeth kicked in outing, but I mean, generally been a really good contributor. And, then, TBA, when you pick up a Rule 5 guy from the Cubs via the Tigers, we'll see what goes on there. But, grade A name in Gage Workman. Do I have that right? Yeah. What's the spelling? Gage Workman, the professional wrestler turned baseball player, now on the White Sox, and they cannot get rid of him because he's a Rule 5 pick. And I guess they can make that attempt, and then you can contact the team and say, hey, if we give you more money, or if we give you this lottery pick, you can work out deals. You don't have to surrender them, but you do lose your rights to a Rule 5 guy the minute you try to designate him. So then you got to do some negotiation. And let's face it, sorry, Chris, back to kicking your teeth in, or kicking you in the nuts, but I'm not really sure I trust you when it comes to negotiation. Bonehead plays. Man, we had a lot. We had a lot of weird hustle in 2024. We had a lot of Pedro Grifol, dead-eye stares, a lot of inconsistency in managing. And given that I've already sort of criticized Will Venable, but hey, listen, it's just the numbers. I'm not really, I'm not after the guy. I mean, it's been 28 games. I don't think there's enough to say he's going to get a statue one day, or that he should be, fired yet. It's 28 games. But in terms of sort of those, I don't know, between the line things, stuff you might trace to the manager, might trace to game prep. It's early to make calls like that, but do you have a vibe on how the White Sox are accounting for themselves in 2025 versus 2024 in that way?
I don't see it yet. I would like to maybe if they started rolling out a consistent lineup where it was pretty clear you knew who was going to play what, and you knew that you wouldn't get an error from them.
Right.
That'd be different. But we're still in a weird experimental phase. And that's probably Venable just trying to figure out with all of the IL exchanges, who's going to do what. But that until that gets hammered out, which probably won't happen until late May, June at this rate, it's hard to see more accountability and guaranteed production and consistency from this team.
And I'm really picking on Will Venable here, but you play 800 spring training games to sort of work some of that stuff out too. And I understand that the early ones are nothing, and you're sort of punting them all, and nothing really matters, and guys are working on stuff or whatever. But it's not like we're sending up Andrew Vaughn batting lefty. I mean, they're not working on that much stuff. So yeah, it's interesting that it might still be working. Hey, the good news for him is Edgar Carroll came up, and now he's just your guaranteed number 3 or cleanup hitter. Isn't that convenient when you have a rookie, a guy who shouldn't be doing anything near what he's doing, being really by far the best hitter on your team? And again, understanding we're talking about a week or 10 days of gameplay, but with the White Sox, you sort of take whatever you can. If the guy's got a .3, if the guy's got a .2 next to his batting average, you just plug him in one of the first 4 spots. And hey, speaking of intangibles between the line, I mean, I think when I wrote up the piece about the White Sox deciding to choose a guy out of thin air named, what is his name? Workman? Gage Workman. It's such a fantastic name. I can't even remember it. Plucking Gage Workman, a guy who had never played above AA, no pressure Gage, now having to fill out the season in the major leagues. But I think one of the speculations is, okay, well, this definitely marks time for Jacob Amaya at shortstop, but maybe even Miguel Vargas at third base. And I don't know, Miguel Vargas got the message. He had himself a pretty decent series in Sacramento. Maybe he just loves Sacto, and he's like, man, this is my place. Sort of gloomy, a little drizzly. These are my people. But yeah, maybe message delivered there at least. Can't say much for Jacob Amaya, but certainly Vargas. I mean, not that Chris Getz is ever going to get. Chris Getz is going to have to get fired before anything gets done with Miguel Vargas, because he's like his lifeline to what is looking like a pretty horrific trade. Although coming to the podcast arsenal near you, probably in a week or so time, we're going to have our first Sox Populi down on the Forum podcast, and we will definitely be talking about Jarrell Perez, one of the guys accumulated in that bizarre 3-team trade where the White Sox sort of got nothing for at least one major league player. And of course, Michael Kopech turned out to be a major league player down the stretch there for the Dodgers. But Jarrell Perez was one of the 2 Dodgers prospects coming back to the White Sox. I guess technically 3. Miguel Vargas, we sort of go to still call you a prospect, certainly based on your output at the end of 2024. But Jarrell Perez has shortstop with some real thump in the bat, playing fairly young for age still. All right, that might be something to get excited about. Okay, I guess a couple of those. Just let Chris Getz just dump player. Like, don't let him dump Tanner Banks, and then somehow we get like William Bergolo back, and it's like, wait, that's actually looking like a really good trade. So maybe he just needs to cut guys, glorified cuts of guys. When he has, well, of course, Pantera's not going to get traded this year, right? But I mean, when he's got like an actual legit major league prospect, well, I'm not sure I trust those trades. But when it's sort of like, hey, can I get something for nothing? Can I get a lottery ticket? Jackson, I mean, pretty okay with his lottery tickets. Boy, is that an endorsement for Chris Getz holding one of the 30 GM jobs in Major League Baseball. What are we doing here? Okay, let's take a break. Just by virtue of the fact that I am waning and weakening and perhaps on my way to the emergency room, and the fact that we only have one guest in the wonderful and delightful Hannah Filippo, means we're going to have a little shorter podcast here. So we're going to take a break now. Come back in a minute or two. I don't know. I mean, we've alluded to maybe some of the negatives or the foreboding of this 2025 season, but I guess we're going to maybe draw some connections, Hannah and I, between 2025 and 2024. There's one big difference. They have one more win so far this season. All right, everybody, sit back. Okay, we're going to be back in a minute or so with, I don't know, more White Sox talk if we got it. Maybe we'll talk about the Brewers or the Bears or I don't know, something else. Okay, hang with us. White Sox fans, my name is Brett Ballantini, gradually weakening here over the course of this podcast, but I'm going to try to dig deep. Stay tough for the last 15, 20 minutes of this podcast. It's 189 with Sox Populi. The mothership is nearing its bicentennial. I don't know. That would come, I don't know, mid-season or so. I don't know how many more we're going to be able to squeeze in this year. I mean, frankly, if we had to do a show of hands, maybe none the rest of the year. But here at this point, we're back to tracking the horribleness of the Chicago White Sox, because guess what? They are on the exact same pace they finished at last year by virtue of winning percentage. I know that doesn't mean anything. We're projecting the next 5 months off of 1 month of play, but what else do we have to go with? Hope. They have to be better. I mean, I got news for you, everybody. They've sort of tapped out the minors, presuming Noah Schultz, presuming Hagen Smith aren't going to be playing a major role, if any role, because their service time, after all, on the 2025 White Sox. Well, then what's left? Kyle Teal, Tim Elko, a relief arm or two, maybe Peyton Pillette or Eric Adler or one of the vet guys. In other words, nothing that's going to really shake this team to the core. So sort of what you got is what you're going to play with for the next 5 months, which is slightly horrifying when you look up and down the lineup, especially if you consider that it easily could have been Chris Getz keeping Chase Mydroth, keeping Edgar Caro down in the minors for long, just because we got to see more, more Corey Lee or more, whatever. So, I mean, that's been a fortunate turn here in April, which I don't think, as much as we thought Chase Mydroth should have broke camp with the White Sox, as much as we knew it was a matter of when, not if, with Edgar Caro, I don't think either one of us would have said 2 weeks into the season, both guys would be on the roster, in the lineup, playing key roles like, I don't know, leadoff, cleanup in the lineup. Oh my God, is this a clown car organization? But sunnier times, I don't know. Hannah, get me to stop talking and tell me ways that you see this team being pretty darn similar. I don't know if there's a way to check the box up worse than 2024, but creepily, eerily, depressingly similar to 2024.
Luis Robert is not looking better.
Oh God, yeah.
And best case scenario, he magically becomes better and then they trade him, or he stays exactly the same as he is now. They don't trade him and they continue to pay for his salary. So that's looking pretty similar.
Yeah.
Bullpen too. Bullpen is. There are a couple people, like I said, Boozer and Murphy, who are doing all right, but like whatever they're doing to keep rolling Jordan Leisure out when they have the lead, they need to stop. It's happened twice now. It's going to happen again. They need to change something up with the bullpen order.
Yeah. The bullpen does remain an issue, even though, I think it's safe to say it's taken a step from the depths of hell it was a year ago. I mean, they have taken a step up, and that's something. I mean, you acquire these veteran arms. Cam Boozer in 1 year, but he's an older guy. Veteran arms for this purpose, and the White Sox have struck out so often, far more often in trades and signings. Rick Hahn loved to build that bullpen for whatever reason. But I mean, you need those guys, but man, they've struck out a lot with bullpen arms. And this goes back to, Ken Williams even. The fact that this is sort of working okay so far, I mean, that is a positive and something that isn't entirely similar to 2024. The problem with Luis, and I'm going to draw a weird parallel that will get me into my whole pet project of a year ago, which was tracking the White Sox falling into becoming a losing franchise. They had only been, you weren't here, you didn't have to listen to me repeat this ad infinitum, but I mean, it was something that really stuck out bizarre. When I tell people, this isn't the White Sox team I grew up a fan of, this is not what the White Sox are. And that even accounts for 30 years in the wilderness after the Black Sox, where the White Sox were horrible from roughly 20 to 50, but I don't know. That said, the White Sox were never a losing franchise. They had about an 8-year stretch in 124 years of baseball, about an 8-year stretch from the 40s into the 50s where they had an overall losing record. One time in their existence had they dipped under. I mean, 8 years, that's a commitment to it, but I mean, one time. And last year, August, I want to say, geez, look, I've forgotten already. They dipped back into being a losing franchise, and now they're about 80 games-ish on, I don't know, it's in the futility watch, 80 games or so on, having now not been a winning franchise. And what we predicted or tried to project based on, okay, when will they come around to being winning again? Because obviously they're piling up a ton of wins. They're burying themselves more and more worse than 500. When could, best case, I think what we said last year was maybe 2030 they might actually get back to even. But like with that, with every game that they're terrible this year, they're just digging a deeper hole away from being a winning overall franchise. And again, who cares? It doesn't matter. We just when we want to win a World Series this year, it doesn't matter if every season before that had been a losing one. Okay, this is a silly endeavor, but it's my stupid entree into talking about Luis, which is, unfortunately, even if tomorrow he steps up and starts being the MVP candidate he was 2 years ago, or 2023, with every bad game he's putting on the docket, because all of last year was bad. Now he's started another month of bad. Of course, it's going to diminish the return, because any team, it's going to be a buyer's market, because it's like, well, all right, which guy are we getting? Yeah, of course, we're going to give you something on the hope that this guy can become or continue to be. Because at this point, nobody's trading for him no matter what. But okay, let's say he plays himself into tradable. Well, I mean, what is going to stand out more to you? His incredible 5 whatever WAR season in 2023, or his sort of injury riddled existence and bewilderingly bad performance. Obviously, even if you say, okay, that's a toss-up, well, you're not going to get the return you hoped you would once. So that's a real problem for the White Sox, because they don't even have the Martin Perez chip to cash now. I mean, they may have. I mean, Camboose are going to get you what, another William Bergola maybe. I mean, you're not going to. There's nobody. So
they're out on the deadline for getting anything of value.
I mean, maybe that's a good thing based on last year, but
yeah. I mean, we don't need another repeat of last year's deadline.
We just sit and wait for those high A guys to make it to the majors. So, see you in 2028, Hannah. Let's just cash in the podcast till then. Other things that may stand out to you as too similar to 2024. I mean, the record you sort of can't get around. That's sort of a given. But other stuff that maybe you were expecting to see different that you haven't seen yet, or maybe something that surprised you to see that's similar.
I'm actually kind of surprised by the rotation giving up more quality, providing more quality starts than I expected. It's the same dance of the rotation providing quality starts and then not having the run production, sadly. But I'm surprised that the young guys have actually been able to hold up for as many innings scoreless or fewer than 2 earned runs given up as long as they have.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, going into the season, I'm not sure you could say there was a lot more confidence in what the rotation was, given that Garrett Crochet had never started a game in his life, no matter what you thought his ceiling was. Eric Fedde, okay, he worked something out overseas, but what is that? How is that going to translate? And then you had generally a similar collection of guys, Nick Nastrini, et cetera, who were like, well, who knows? Now, granted, obviously, Crochet and Fedde were neck and neck for as good a pitcher as you had in the American League up to the deadline, which is absolutely the best possible outcome. The White Sox haven't quite gotten there with their guys, but yeah, the fact that this rotation could be holding its own, maybe even in a depth sense, might actually be. I mean, there's no way to be superior to Crochet Fedde first half last year, but depth wise be as solid or more so than 2024, which again was the only standout part of the White Sox in 2024 at all, undermined completely by defense, bullpen, and hitting. But yeah, you're right. This would not have been something I think we could have hoped for. And even though they've had sort of stops and starts, they haven't been able to keep that streak of never giving up an earned run ever all season. The fact that Shane Smith, the fact that Davis Martin, the fact that even Jonathan Cannon has shown off a little bit. Martin Perez before getting hurt was better than I think we could have anticipated. That's not bad. I guess it's got to be that way, because I'm not really sure there's anybody who's going to come rescue this rotation. That may be proven by the fact that apparently now the 5th spot or whatever, the 4th spot in the rotation is just going to be a bullpen game now. I'm not really sure what in the world is going on with a major league professional baseball team deciding, we're just going to bullpen, not because it's a doubleheader, not because there's 20 games in 18 days, but no, just because we don't got anybody and we can't actually tap into our precious 40-man roster with all these very, very, very valuable veterans that we can't possibly get rid of to bring up an actual starting pitcher. That is not an endorsement of the system whatsoever. But Chris, we see you. You're writing in invisible ink, but we see you. We are revealing it. Yeah, I don't know what I have to add in terms of the similarity beyond just the fact that the results are still the same. We can be positive about, hey, they're They're closer. They're in more games. It's sort of bizarre that most of their wins still are bunching around. It's at least 3 of them now, 3 out of 7 blowouts or big run production. This is a strange thing I would not ever have anticipated coming into the season, that the White Sox lineup would ever, even against a little league pitcher, would ever be able to bunch runs, string hits in 3 games already, and have arguably, I guess this last one against the A's wasn't technically a blowout, but double either blowouts or double figure run games from this lineup. That's got to surprise you a little bit too. I mean, this offense has not in any way taken a step forward from last year, right? Beyond the young guys.
No, it hasn't. And it is surprising. It's very small. They're doing it in a very small ball way. They don't have that many homers too. So it's just that it is surprising to see that much, but also I'm glad that at least they're getting some run production in as opposed to last year. It was bleak in September.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Down home stretch.
The run diff, like by this point last year, I mean, I guess we could easily track it, but I mean, it was significantly worse. I don't know if they were 100 runs underwater quite yet, but man, they gobbled at it really quickly. It was like, oh my God, it was just, they were like at the bottom of the Grand Canyon immediately. So yeah, the fact that granted, obviously it's not really adding up to much in terms of record. And again, whether that's an indictment of the very delicate in-game decisions being made by Will Venable, or just the fact that every player just happens to just choke just enough not to get the wins. The idea that the White Sox are in so many games and they still have 7 wins compared to 6 a year ago. And, in my made-up stat of managerial war, that is not going to reflect well on Will Venable, because if you just look at it, you're going to say, all right, he is seizing. I really have to look at team war to know this for sure, but he is finding ways to lose games as the leader of this team, whether that is clubhouse, in-game decision-making, lineup, whatnot. And that's very harsh for 1 month in. So I'm not writing that in pen, but right now it is penciled in like, Will, I'm taking note of what you're doing, and I'm not sure that the Boolean attitude and great smile compared to Pedro's death stare and fast is really making much of a difference. And frankly, we know in a documented way in the standings, it's not making a difference because it's just 1 game better. And I don't know, it's rough. As Hannah said, Crystal O'Keefe is not with us to provide a pocket schedule title for like the second run printing, as if the White Sox need to make a second run printing of their pocket schedule because people are storming the gates and storming down the doors to get into the ballpark. But hey, Hannah said it, it's tough. Chicago White Sox baseball 2025, it's tough. It is tough. Let's wind up, Hannah, by talking about the one team that the White Sox can smile about. And that is a team probably on paper just as bad as the White Sox, but with the unfortunate circumstance of being in what looks like a month in one of the better divisions in baseball history. That is the poor, unfortunate Colorado Rockies, stuck in a division with 4 teams better than 500, including some stellar and standout clubs, again, so far in the Dodgers and the Padres. They have started out the season 4-23 as we record. They have a negative 69 run differential. But even that, Hannah, even a negative 69, still just run diff projection, that's still just 42-120. They're still not as bad as what the White Sox actually were in 2024. Because now, of course, the talk is like, who's going to get there first? Are 2 teams going to end up losing 120 games this year? And listen, it could happen. White Sox right now are 2.5 games better than the Rockies. They played 1 more game, I think. I don't know. So the bonus question as we wind up, Hannah, is will the White Sox be better in 2025 than the Colorado Rockies? Will they tie? Which technically means that the White Sox are a lot worse given this schedule that the Rockies have to play. You still play more games against your division. It's not quite as bad, right? It's still slightly unbalanced, or is it completely balanced? It's still slightly.
It's slightly
But yeah,
imbalanced.
it's
I'd
less
have to
than it
look up
was.
the exact number, but it's
Yeah, it's
more.
like 14 games now. So it used to be 18. So yeah, it's like that's like a series per team, and it's going to add up. So technically, if they finish the same, that means the White Sox are way worse than the Rockies. Or will the White Sox actually finish worse than the Rockies? And this presumes some expertise you have on the NL West and specifically the Colorado Rockies that I would not presume you possess. But that said, what's your thought about this? Because it's a fun talking point, given that there's one team in baseball as bad as the White Sox, which we didn't have last year.
Well, I think the Rockies might beat them, but just because the Sox can't even hold their own record for better or for worse. They can't even be the owners of a record. So I would say the Rockies this year. But I do think that the Sox have more to prove than the Rockies. Whereas, I mean, the Rockies organizationally just that's also, I mean, talk about a dumpster fire. Both teams are a dumpster fire, but you can kind of see the wheels turning a little bit more on the Sox with the young guys coming up. I don't see that in the near future for the Rockies, or at least until the deadline. They might make a couple Sox-esque moves like last year at the deadline of trading away their couple guys like Kyle Farmer, who they just brought in for whatever reason. But it's not going to amount to much.
Yeah. Yeah. Who gets traded first with a onerous contract? Chris Bryant or Luis Robert? Who knows? Or maybe they can trade for each other. Come back to Chicago and you'll just thump the ball again, and you can still like live in Wrigleyville. It'll just be like old times, Chris. Yeah, when we are laughing at another organization and calling it a dumpster fire, even if you're watching on YouTube, no, I haven't collapsed yet, and we have brought back our Diabolik art from a year ago because the White Sox have earned it. That is Sox Park in various states of disarray, on fire, which stems from one of her recaps a year ago. We miss you, Di. If we can make fun of Colorado, man, that boy, don't feel too good being a Colorado Rockies fan. And I misspoke, because a year ago, at least in the early going, I mean, in the end, no, but in the early going, the White Sox were sort of neck and neck with this terrible start with the Marlins and the Rockies. So it wasn't as if this year, oh, wow, look, we have another team. We have a team in the National League that's sort of our companion team here, and we're going to just both go for the record. No, actually, there were, at least for a while there, at least at this point in the season last year, Miami and Colorado were both very much in the mix for, wow, they are horrible teams. And wow, how can you not be competitive, at least in a moderate way, in a 500 way in today's baseball, much less being in a major market that plays down to being the smallest market. Are you one of the 15 CHSN viewers, or are you finding other ways to consume your White Sox baseball? Because it seems like that is a very small group, a 4-figure group, and shrinking these days. How's it been for you?
No, I watch on MLB TV. The whole CHSN stuff is when it first came out, it sounded like a nightmare. It sounded horrible to deal with, and more people I talk to just prove my point. So there's no reason for me to invest in it, especially to watch the Sox of all teams.
Yeah. Go figure. Like the Yankees are, they're like, hey, let's do Yes Network. It's like $1 billion earner, and everybody loves. I don't know if that's just true. You wouldn't catch me dead before watching the Yankees, but by all accounts, not the clown show that this is. I mean, you think even the Colorado Rockies could put together some sort of TV network with like the Nuggets or the Broncos or whatever, and get the games in people's homes to watch. It's like, what are they trying to do? Sell those boxes where you drop a coin in to actually watch the game or something, like way back in the On TV and Sports Vision before it was Sports Channel days. Oh, goodness gracious.
Yeah, between the Avs and the Broncos, they got two fun teams to watch. And Chicago, I mean, Blackhawks are bleak, and the Bulls are doing the most Bulls thing ever by continuously losing to the Heat in the play-in. So not much has changed.
Yep. And we can all hope for the best with the Bears, but they managed to evade whatever their championship pedigree is. They evaded it last year at least. I don't know what this year will hold. I don't pay any attention at all. So, and frankly, I don't really care. Sorry, Chicago sports fans. I mean, this is a whole other podcast talking about the bleak and dismal history, recent history of Chicago sports. But as bad as our ownership is, we're still not Cubs ownership, Hannah. We can always say that. We're still not the friggin' Ricketts family. So that's really, really, really damning with faint praise. And we're putting the bar on the ground. But we've talked about it many times, because what else could we talk about other than how bad the White Sox were last year? But I have presented this question to many people, and that is, could you, given that family taking over the team, could you continue to be a fan? And I know many Cubs fans tell me, oh, my fandom is more powerful and it's stronger than that, and they can't take that away from me. And I know we've had people doing the same with the White Sox. Hey, Reinsdorf, whatever, he will be gone one day. A White Sox fan, true. But I can say with true definition that if the Ricketts family had bought the White Sox, I would not be a White Sox fan. I would still celebrate the history. I mean, the history is part of you, the games you went to, the knowledge you have of maybe history, but it's hard enough to be White Sox fan right now. Oh my goodness. Anyway, I'll let you ponder that essay question, because at this point, come second half, we're gonna have not anything to talk about.
It's a separating the art from the artist type of question, and
it really is.
I'd like to say that I'd still be a fan, but I don't think there would be a part of me that would always know who the owner is in the back of my mind, and that's saying something with Reinsdorf sitting there too.
Yeah. Listen, the guy's not a saint, obviously, and he's horribly tarnished whatever legacy he had. And I know there are people who go back and say, oh, I hated him from the start, he sucked, but yeah, okay. I always was more a defender. I mean, the World Series alone, but certainly, the Bulls run, and I know he was just gifted a championship. That's not true. Buying a team with Michael Jordan on it, okay, you could do worse, but come on, Michael Jordan didn't win a championship until anyway. But yeah, oh no, I would have trouble. I'm not sure if this is true, but in a sports fandom sense, I would have trouble sleeping at night if that was my ownership. And again, that, as you said, Anna, that says a lot when our current ownership is Jerry Reinsdorf, hiring abusers, giving GM jobs to the unqualified, having shots go off in the park, charging $8,000 for park. There's a lot to get angry about, but again, still not the Cubs. And Cubs fans can say, oh well, hey, listen, we're first, yeah, right, jealous much. No. This all started when they won the World Series. This all started when they won the World Series. You a crack in the time continuum like that, of course we're where we are now. Country sinking. Anyway, a totally different podcast. Probably best to cut off now, because I know some of you out there are so mad hearing that. Sorry. You want to look the other way? You can look the other way. But we're not looking the other way. Me and Hannah, we're not looking the other way. Say no to the Ricketts. Say no to the Cubs. Say no to Wrigleyville. Say no to the piss troughs. Anyhow, it's been a fun Populi Podcast 189. Only 11 more till we hit 200. Oh, my God. Will the White Sox be on a worse pace than 2024? By the time we hit podcast 200, will we somehow stretch into next year, because we'll just have to lay down and avoid any more podcasts, because it's just so painful to keep acknowledging this. This is now, we're really going some way 3 years on this horror show of a team being terrible. I mean, 7-21 start 2 years ago, 6-22 a year ago, 7-21 again. I guess we know what it's going to be in 2026, Hannah. Let me guess. 6 out of 28. I think that's what it's going to be. Anyhow, in spite of this lousy team, we appreciate you being here to listen to us, to even view us sometimes on the Sox Pop YouTube channel. And of course, always reading us at Southside Sox, because that's where we are. And occasionally at Sox Populi. Hey, you're talking right now. You're listening to, or you could talk to, you're probably angry. You're probably yelling at your podcast machine right now saying, what is this guy talking about right now? So, okay, you are now yelling at the 100% staff of Sox Populi, the website on Fans First Sports Network. Hannah Filippo writing a little nationally, writing a little bit White Sox. I'm trying to do, although I'm hopelessly behind and now deathly ill, so probably not going to actually keep up with it, but trying to do a nightly recap of the White Sox and sort of bullet point form. So, hey, step over there too. That thing, if you're seeing a tweet and coming to us for the first time on that hideous Twitter X site, stop on over to the site itself, because there's great Hannah Filippo writing on MLB generally and on the White Sox. And I try to pitch into to make sure that our site there also stays fresh. So Sox Populi writing, Southside Sox writing, Sox Populi podcasts. It's a menagerie. It's a menagerie of horror on a team that now projects to finish at 40.5 wins and 121.5 losses, which would technically be even worse than last year. The thing that you thought couldn't happen, well, 1/6 of the year down, it's happening. Okay, anyhow, before I collapse and make Hannah take over and talk Brewers, which again is an entirely different podcast, and we'd be happy to have it sometime. And believe me, Hannah, we may, because this is getting tiresome. Until next time, I don't know. Again, it'll probably be another week, 10 days. We're trying to time these with days off. I don't know if I'm going to stick to that or not. We have plenty of other podcasts. We have a new Soxy Chicks up right before or right after this one on your podcast player. And we're going to have Visiting Dugout, also with Crystal O'Keefe, previewing the Brewers very shortly up as well, because that series is coming right around the corner. Oh, gosh, hide your eyes. Damn your eyes, because White Sox take one of those, take 1 of 3 there. Man, it's going to be a good thing. Okay, yeah, prediction on the series. Given that you do sort of have a foot in each camp to a degree, Hannah, you think it's going to be a sweep for the Brewers, or you think they're actually going to give up a game to the Sox, or you can't possibly be predicting more than 1 win for the White Sox. So what's it going to be, sweep or 1 win?
Sweep.
Okay. There's your mini Visiting Dugout. Sorry to steal your thunder, Crystal O'Keefe. There's the mini Visiting Dugout. Hannah Filippo says, I'm not going to argue. Oh, Lord. Okay, well, if you decide to crawl back to us after we insulted the cores of our country, and also the White Sox and Chris Getz. Chris, you can listen next time, too. Come on, you know you do listen. You got to keep it. Apparently, you're listening to somebody to make some of the decisions you're making. It's not our podcast. Maybe you should listen to our podcast. Listen to me and Hannah. We'll guide you. Get Tim Elko up.
Please.
Any rant? I mean, I sort of stole your thunder there. Any late rant on why Tim Elko is not up on the White Sox taking at bats away from Andrew Vaughn, Hannah?
It seems like Chris Getz had some passion project to just wave a wand and hope that Vaughn saves the day. And that'll save his job or save him from criticism, but it's not going to happen. And why do we have someone batting 150 at first base when Tim Elko is smashing in AAA? It makes sense.
Chris, you know what you got to do. You got to put Andrew Vaughn back in left field, because that's where he hit. Of course, the hit's in quotes, but it wasn't a zero war. No, don't do that either. But how about this? Say you're putting him in left field and just sort of put him on the bench, or give him the left field glove again, take some reps. Just don't ever put him out there. It's a thought. I'm not sure why you'd use one of your 26 spots on the roster to keep a guy you're never going to play again. And as Hannah, I think, has already said, there's some sort of weird passion project going on there where, even though that was Rick Hahn's pick, Chris Getz he's going to carry the torch for Andrew Vaughn, the diminutive first baseman who can't even hit, all-time great NCAA hitter, all-time questionable MLB hitter. Okay, on that sad note, we will see you again in, I don't know, week or 10 days. My guess, if I had to bet, and we do not endorse anything like that, no matter what you may have heard at the break from Fans First Sports Network in the commercials. I don't really know what commercials they show. It could be Slap Chop for all I know, but I'm gonna guess it has something to do with betting. If I was a betting person, I would say that Hannah Filippo will be with us on podcast 190, because she's had a incredible attendance record so far. In fact, I would dare say a better chance she'll be on the next podcast than the host. So that is not a prediction of death for me. I'm feeling better. And obviously hasn't affected my voice or my propensity to talk over my delightful guests or give you all sorts of insightful information about the Chicago White Sox you have learned to love, to hate. But still, chances are she'll be here next time. Maybe not me. Anyhow, 190's next. Week or two. Hang with us. Thanks for watching, listening, reading, all that stuff. Without you, there's no purpose for us being here. Me and Hannah would be just like, shooting a bull about, like whatever. It certainly wouldn't be about the White Sox. We'd just be talking. Anyhow, well, thanks for sitting in and listening in on Hannah and I's conversation about this decrepit baseball club. By the time we do another podcast, maybe things will be better. I don't think technically, mathematically, they really sort of can't get worse. There's a challenge, Chris gets. They can't get worse, so hopefully at least the same or better. Chances are better despite the imminent sweep this week against the Brewers. But really, it's gone 50 minutes now. That's way, way too long for Chicago White Sox podcast. So, Hannah, thank you for putting up with me for 50 minutes. We'll see all of you in another week or two when we have to talk again about the Chicago White Sox.